This is Jerome Corsi, and we're here with thetruthcentral.com. Today is Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. And we've got quite a good lineup here to talk with you about today. I mean, a lot going on. I want to start out here with this first story, which is that the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which was, again, created after World War II. This is one of the first forays into international global banking. Well, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, announced in their spring meeting that they are going to create a central bank digital currency for the world. It's going to be a universal monetary unit, they call it the UMU, Universal Monetary Unit, a global digital currency for the world. And this is going to be another move into globalism. The IMF said in a statement that the UMU functions like a central bank digital currency. And I guess the IMF considers itself the world's central bank. As a legal and global money commodity, the purpose of this iteration of this new version of a central bank digital currency is to make sure banking regulations are enforced, as well as to protect the financial integrity of the international banking system. Well, that's all nice language. What does it really mean? It means that they're trying to use the SWIFT system, perpetuate the SWIFT system to go on the central bank digital currency, because what the central banks are afraid of is that you're going to get a cryptocurrency solution. For instance, XRP, which is set to be not exactly a cryptocurrency, but more of an algorithm that you can use to do international trade. And I've explained this a number of times. It's complicated till you get used to it. International trade, let's say you're in two countries that don't use the dollar. You're in one country that uses the euro, another country that uses, say, the ruble in Russia. You want to buy something from Germany, it's being sold in Russia, like if you want to buy oil or natural gas. The normal way would be they'd translate the euro into dollars. They'd send the dollars to Russia because both countries maintain dollar reserves for international trade. Russia then takes the dollars and converts that into rubles. That's a long, complicated process. What they're trying to do is get it all digital, but that's not as good, because what you're going to be able to do with XRP or other of these, once you get this ISO, this international standard set for digital, you're going to be just able to trade XRP. You won't have to go into another currency. So the central bank digital currencies are fighting with each other to maintain the country positions. China's going to have its own central bank digital currency. We're going to have one. I think the likelihood is that it's going to go in the direction of more crypto solution. But what I'm concerned about here is that once we go to digital money, and this is a slippery slope of how it's going to develop, I want to kind of go through the step by step with you here, because cryptocurrency is just the first step. There's an article that I did not post today, but it's on the Gatestone Institute, and it's about central banks' digital money is funny money. If you go through the history of money, people began with gold, something of gold or silver, which was value. And even though you can't eat gold, it still has always historically had value as money to buy something, etc. Now, once you get various new laws like this Kelo versus New London, which was a law, it's a Supreme Court decision that basically said that the public good overweighs your private property. So if the state wants to take your private property under Kelo v. New London, if they posit a better public good, they can use eminent domain and take your property. Now, basically what this means is that as you get into the nature of capitalism with private property, this kind of a Supreme Court decision will allow the government. We've even seen James Dimon. We reported on this yesterday. He is the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, who says ought to use eminent domain to take your house, your private property, and put up solar or wind farms in order to combat global warming. Well, again, all over the last few centuries, last century and a half, paper money was introduced first, going back into early colonial times. We had the colonies producing paper money. And next we had a central bank, which came in under Wilson, 1913, Woodrow Wilson. He was a student of Hegel. Now we've got a central bank, which it has a de facto monopoly to print the money. And then finally, you eliminate gold and silver, which Richard Nixon did as backing for the money. Now you've got fiat currency. You can print all you want. With the federal governments in terms of virtual money, which is fiat money, these free markets begin to disappear. So if governments and central banks monitor every transaction that is in current digital currency, every single transaction, they can determine how much value you've got, what you're doing. They can eliminate whatever remains of private property, because basically the government, central banks have a digital monopoly over the legalized forms of money. They can redistribute wealth or penalize personal behavior if you don't behave according to the way the state wants you to behave. So you get a new, racism or whatever, another pandemic. And essentially, we surrender our rights for the common good, and we have the digital currencies, which are able to control every penny we spend. And as long as it's digital, there's no electricity, or if you're unplugged, good luck, because you're out of luck at that point. So the world is moving in these directions, and I think we've got to monitor this very carefully, because what is at stake here is our freedom. If we don't have gold and silver, and I continue to stress this is why, if you take a look at the website, Swiss America is our sponsor. And if you take a look at that Walking Liberty $50, here's Walking Liberty $50. I'll show you a bunch of them right there. It's a whole set of them right there. You can see how they look. They're beautiful coins. They're about 90% silver. There you go. The better picture of it there. And if you fill out that form, it's a one-time offer, introductory offer. Swiss America will contact you, and it's consultative selling. They'll advise you, and you get real gold or silver or platinum. Don't get certificates and the like. Deal with a reputable company. I've been dealing with Swiss America for over 20 years now, and I'll tell you, they are honest, and they will do a good job helping you within your needs. I'm not giving financial advice here. I'm representing the sponsor and telling you that they can give you excellent financial advice. They're equipped to do it, and they're one of the best. Now, if we go back to the topics today that I want to cover, this has been the first. I'm going to go to the next topic here, which is a law that's being introduced right now in the U.S. Senate, which has me pretty concerned. This is a law that is going through into the Senate right now. It's being proposed by a couple of my least favorite people. We have this by this Arizona Senator, Kristen Sinema. And basically what the law is, it's called the Improving the Digital Identity Act of 2023. It got passed by the U.S. Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee in the Senate, and now it's on the floor. What they want to do is they want to create a digital ID. And of course, they're saying that this is the kind of thing we need in a global society to have our identity clearly established. Social Security numbers not good enough. Social Security numbers are often stolen. So you're going to get a digital ID, and I guess it will work on your cell phone. Now, again, this is another step towards government control and surveillance. And if these kind of laws pass, you'll have a digital ID app that opens up on your phone which you may have to demonstrate to take a flight or to do all kinds of transactions. And that's what we saw experimented with the green passports that were used commonly in Europe to make sure people were properly health qualified to travel during the pandemic. Now, these technologies raise really serious issues regarding freedom, mobility, security, access to, the kinds of freedoms and privileges we've commonly enjoyed as Americans. Fundamental to our founding fathers was the principle of limited government. Central bank digital currencies themselves, this evolution, which is going on very rapidly, and the entire move here towards digital IDs, and all being maintained very much electronically on the internet, but you won't be able to operate unless you have these, is fairly frightening. Now, I'd like to, my producer, Chris, I'd like to have you weigh in, Chris. What do you think about all this?
I can tell you this. I believe a lot of people will look at this and say, this is quite dangerous, but there will be a healthy number of people around the world who will look at these ideas of a global currency and the global ID, the global digital ID, as the wave of the future, almost like living in their own science fiction movie. This will be appealing to a lot of people without knowing the severe consequences that you, Jerome or Jerry, are pointing out today.
Well, they first be introduced as this great innovation. I mean, look at how wonderful this is, how you can prove your ID and prevent identity theft, et cetera, et cetera. And for a while, it will be presented as a great boon, as a great benefit to humanity, until the governments decide that they are now going to use it as a surveillance tool, which inevitably they will. Governments inevitably go for greater power. Now, go ahead, Chris.
I do want to step back to something you said before about Kilo versus New London.
Yeah.
People who are listening don't realize that this wasn't taking houses to build a highway. This case had nothing to do with the public good in and of itself. This case had to do with building a mall, taking people's homes to build a mall.
That's right.
So when Jamie Dimon says the government should be taking houses and taking private property to build solar farms or to build whatever they feel like building to push this green agenda, the government can argue, if Kilo versus New London sets a precedent that you can take homes for a mall, then you can take it for whatever energy policy the government thinks it can push forward.
That's correct. And see, the fundamental principle of we lived under capitalism is that private property. This has been the big debate with communism, that there is no private property. When Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum says basically you won't own anything in the future and you'll be happy, I mean, that's essentially a communist idea. But once you establish within the system of private property this whole notion of public good, and public good outweighs your individual needs, well, defining what public good is very difficult, because if public good means, well, we need a shopping mall, or we need a solar farm, or we need whatever we think we need, whatever the current meme is or the current government narrative, well, there is no private property. It's not secure, and it's not sacrosanct. Our Constitution was written so that there are certain principles. That's what Thomas Jefferson's brilliance was, to say that our rights are God-given rights. They're sacrosanct. They can't be taken away. They're not granted by the government. Well, we're moving into a world where everything is granted by the government, which means that you have no rights unless the government agrees you have rights. And that's a very dangerous situation to be in. Let's keep moving, because I want to cover a lot today. I want to move into this next article here about Russia. Russia has just tightened up their conscription laws, which means that they can enlist more Russian men into the army to fight. Now, the measure, when Putin announced that there was going to be a mobilization in the fall, when he needed to commandeer reinforcements for the war in Ukraine, thousands of Russians fled the country. But these new measures are going to make it almost impossible for them to dodge conscription, the law provides for electronic military summonses with bans on draftees leaving the country, making it possible to quietly sweep up thousands more to fight in Ukraine, even as the Kremlin is denying plans for controversial new mobilization. So again, they're going to do electronic monitoring of the people they want to conscript. And the chaotic mobilization which happened last year, when military officers were obliged to physically hand out paper notices, there were scenes of young men being grabbed from the streets and at subway stations or wrestled to the ground in shopping malls, fleeing military officials. Now the electronic summonses will be issued to conscript Russian military men between ages 18 to 27. They can bring them also go after members of the Russian military reserve or anyone else they want to get. And there's a couple of points about this. Number one, it's another indication of the extent to which this electronic world is going to make it difficult to have individual rights. But the point is also that Russia is at war. Russia is at war against NATO. We called it a proxy war. We're going to find out that there's increasing involvement, I believe, of the NATO countries, the United States included, I believe, in Ukraine, not just supplying arms, but probably supplying other kinds of military assistance. Now, in a sense, a proxy war is what we fought, for instance, in Vietnam or North Korea. In the Korean War and the Vietnamese War, we were really fighting China, trying to check the expansion of communism in Asia. But at the same time, we weren't fighting against China. We were fighting North Korea that invaded South Korea in the 1950s, early 1950s, or we were dealing with the North Vietnamese communists who were trying to take over South Vietnam. So the war was not directly against China, and the same is here also true. The war is not exactly against the United States and Russia, but we are fighting through Ukraine against Russia. And because we're supporting Ukraine, we're like China supporting North Korea or China supporting North Vietnam. It's a proxy war. And I believe Russia is going to now turn its attention also to Finland. Finland just joined NATO. Finland is Russia's access to the Baltic Sea into the Atlantic. Ukraine is Russia's access to the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, and then out to the Atlantic. Russia is not going to be denied access to the Atlantic. And moving these two countries into NATO is going to be viewed, I think, appropriately as an aggressive act designed to put pressure on Russia. The United States seems to be much more working together with China, although China is heating up over Taiwan. China just ran a series of war games over Taiwan over the weekend, which were very little reported. But China was demonstrating it could basically seal off Taiwan, and it could do so in a matter of hours, both with air cover and just blockade of ships. China has the forces, and it's a long way away. I mean, get the other side of the Pacific going back to World War II. General MacArthur advises not to fight another land war in the Pacific. And he was right. Neither Korea nor Vietnam turned out very well. We let Hong Kong go to China. That was a British colony. When China took it over initially, China promised that the Hong Kong citizens would have freedoms and rights. Well, China decided within the last few years to take those away, and China now controls Hong Kong, and it's Chinese rules with the freedoms gone. A lot of the people who resisted that are now in prison or dead. And I don't think we'll be able to get the world. Macron in France is already talking with China and trying to persuade the EU to give up Taiwan. The French, of course, don't want to go to war for Taiwan, and I don't think going to war for Taiwan is going to be a very good idea for the United States either, unfortunately, because we're now at a point with the world where, with these tensions building, we're not far away from a nuclear war. One of these local conflicts could escalate into a nuclear war very quickly with a few miscalculations. I've also reported this week that Israel is reinforcing itself because Iran is making determined moves now to beef up its presence in Syria. Syria borders on Israel in the northwest, in the Damascus Heights. Right at Damascus, you can go up to the Golan Heights and you can see Damascus from Israel. And one of the 1973 war was fought in the Golan Heights. There's still tanks and the like up there from that war that are just abandoned, but relics of that war. So again, all these local tensions. You've got Russia in an alliance with China and Iran, and that's definitely against the United States, and it's going to produce these intensified regional conflicts. Now, I want to cover a couple of economic stories. This one's important. I covered it yesterday, but there's more detail coming out now about the EPA, the Environmental Protection Act, which is a bunch of bureaucrats not elected anywhere by anybody. And the Biden administration is proposing that there be rules where 2/3 of new cars and 1/4 of new heavy trucks sold by 2032 are electric. Well, that's basically 9 years from now, and it's a major overhaul. Right now, only about under 6% of all vehicles sold are electric. But these new standards are going to be sweeping. I mean, it's being reported widely. It also got reported by the Wall Street Journal today, and they're saying that this is going to be a restructuring of all the emission standards, all the production standards, so that only electric vehicles are really going to qualify. They're much more expensive. Now, one of the commenters on one of the social media posts that we do, and we're doing many, you can see them up in the upper right-hand corner of the Truth Central website, both audio and visual, said, well, if you give me a car, give me an electric car free, I'll drive it. Well, again, this is the very thinking is, okay, well, let the government control all the money. Let the government have machines, let the robots run everything, let artificial intelligence be there, and human beings won't be needed. So we'll have universal income, and the government will give us cars. Government, like we did during the pandemic, government will just give us money. Well, again, it's very easy to get into. Sure, I'll drive a car that's electric if you give it to me. Well, again, that's not a solution. If you have an electric car and you need to recharge it, how many recharging stations are we going to have all across the United States if 2/3 of all trucks and cars are electric? I mean, when you go, so, okay, you're up in Vermont. Now 2/3 of the cars are, or New Hampshire, or Arizona or New Mexico. Are you going to put charging stations all through Arizona and New Mexico? So if 2/3 of the cars need recharging, they can do it in 15 minutes? Or are you going to have people waiting hours to recharge because there's too many electrical vehicles? The charging stations are broken or don't work fast. And if there's no electricity, nobody goes anywhere. The electric grid goes down, you're stuck if you have to recharge your vehicle. Battery goes out, you probably get a $15,000 to $20,000 expense replacing that battery. These vehicles corrode and they catch fire. There's a lot of issues with the electric vehicles. And again, as I point out, climate change is, go to my book. Please read these things. Educate yourself about climate science. The book is The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. And I demonstrate in that book that the science behind global warming is really not valid. There's the book. You've got to do some educating of yourself. Got to get into the facts, because these are not fact-based. These are more ideologically based ideas. And if we're going to start re-engineering and re-architecting the entire electrical grid, the entire way we use automobiles, the entire way we use energy, because of an ideological idea that carbon dioxide is the thermostat of the earth, and if we burn more hydrocarbon fuels, we're going to heat up the planet and all die, it is largely nonsense. I mean, if you read the book, I read a whole chapter in there about abiotic oil. Oil is natural. It's made by the earth on a constant basis. I'm actually thinking about taking some of the things I've written about abiotic oil over the years and putting them into one book. I think it's an important enough idea. I may do that this year. I'm trying to get things out so you can read them and begin to educate yourself. And this website's going to help you do that. It's going to have things that are really useful for you. We're going to do this My Vital C, which is another one of our sponsors. My Vital C is a molecule, carbon-60. It has remarkable principles in terms of longevity. I've taken it for years, and I can tell you that it increases mental capacity, mental facilities, energy, sleeping better. I really recommend you try some of these products in My Vital C as well. We're only going to have things on the website, I think, that I've used, that I know very well, and I'm really recommending you give a try. Okay, now I want to cover one more story here before we're done, and then I'll let Chris comment. This next story I think is equally important. We're going through a banking crisis that is not over yet. I know that you'll be told it's over, but let's kind of go down and look at the facts of the details. The Wall Street Journal had an article recently about what's going on with credit. And after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, and there's a lot of banks in the United States who are holding all these treasury bonds, that's another part of the modern monetary theory of fiat currency. Just print the money, and the central bank and other banks buy the debt. Well, if the central bank's holding interest rates at zero, which they did through the Obama years to stimulate economic growth to make Obama look good, well, it did work, but the banks are now loaded with these treasury bonds that have like zero coupon. They don't pay very much. When interest rates go up to 5 or 6%, those bonds have to be marked to market on a constant basis for the banks to do their asset liability ratios, and the assets are worth less. That's why the banks have asset problems. Now, the assets in a bank are its loans. The banks psychologically deal with deposits as if they were their assets. Now, when you get this kind of a credit crunch, the banks retrench on lending, which slows down economic activity for companies that need debt to survive. That's kind of part of corporate finance, is to issue debt. And individuals need corporate financing to buy capital purchases, homes, automobiles, etc. Well, this was pretty shocking to me, this paragraph. No companies with investment grade credit ratings. In other words, these are AAA companies. These are companies that have investment grade ratings. No companies with investment grade ratings sold bonds in the 6 business days from March 10 to March 17th. The first week in March without a new high grade bond sale since 2013. I mean, this is really getting to be a tightening of credit. And at the same time, the market for new junk bond sales has stalled. No companies have gone public on the New York Stock Exchange in more than 2 weeks. So what's happening is there's a shifting down of credit, which is going to impact our growth. The International Monetary Fund has come out again just this week, and they are downgrading the global prospect for economic growth in 2013, largely because they think the bank crisis worldwide is not over, and I tend to agree with them. Chris, comments on what we've covered?
Now, let's say you probably don't want my comments on this. What you want is to hear from somebody within the government who says, well, there is no credit crunch. No,
Okay.
there's nothing to worry about.
Play it for us.
There was a lovely lady named Janet Yellen who decided to speak in front of, what was it? It was the World Bank spring conferences.
Yes, it was a spring conference where they were talking about global warming is the main problem.
Right. Exactly. So let's hear from Janet Yellen and see what she has to say about how stable this great economy is and how there's no indication of a credit crunch, even though, we kind of had a big bank run recently. But let's hear from her.
I've not really seen evidence at this stage suggesting a contraction in credit, although that is a possibility. I believe our banking system remains strong and resilient. It has solid capital and liquidity. And the US economy is obviously performing exceptionally well with continued solid job creation, inflation gradually moving down, robust consumer spending. So I'm not anticipating a downturn in the economy, although, of course, that remains a risk.
I just love how there's two.
What planet is this woman on?
Well, there's a couple things. When we used to educate children, we would tell them saying so doesn't make it true. So she's got a great verbal story here. It's just not true. Okay. If you believed her, it's a narrative.
She's doing PR basically.
Well, it's a narrative. Yeah.
Right.
She's creating a reality in words that she wants you to believe. The second thing is, whether it's Janet Yellen or the State Department or the EU, these people all learn how to speak a certain way as if they're this governmental authority. Suddenly, even Hillary Clinton did it when she was Secretary of State. They get a different tone, as if they're lecturing to you. I can't exactly phrase it, but if you listen to her, she sounds like she is on a pedestal and she's proclaiming the truth from heaven, when she's making it all up and it isn't true. And yet the authority she's trying to convey from her position, which impresses her more than it impresses me, because she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's got the job, but she still doesn't know what she's talking about. And it isn't the reality if you look at the economic numbers. So I'm saying people have got to educate themselves. They got to look at the facts, not the narratives.
I understand she has a job to do and she wants to try to make America look like it's financially stable, look like, hey, well, amid all this high inflation, again, a lot of the global inflation was caused by the U.S. and its overdependency on energy. But she's saying, hey, we're stable. Our guys are doing a great job. I don't know if she really believes it or not. But the fact is,
she believes it. She believes it.
It just looks bad.
It's a Wizard of Oz act. It's a Wizard of Oz act.
Yeah.
It sounds real good until you get the curtain pulled back and you see these people don't know what they're doing.
Right.
When you realize that they're lying, that they really know they're lying, but they are trying to reassure you so that you continue to go along. If you look at the facts for yourself, you would realize that we had much more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere going back to the 4.6 billion years ago when the Earth was formed. We've had much more noxious gases. The Earth was a very hot, molten place back then. It actually has, over billions of years, less noxious gases in the Earth, which is why we're here. We've had more carbon dioxide during ice ages. So it didn't make the ice go away. The ice ages were here because the elliptical orbit of the Earth, we were farther from the sun, which we get about every 100,000 years. It's a very complex process of how the Earth goes around the sun. And if you don't understand it, and don't take the time to think about these things and read about them and learn a little bit of the science, I try to teach that in this book, then these people with these narratives are convincing because you want to believe them. You want to believe everything's okay. And that's the psychological game they're playing. And that's why we're called the Truth Central, because thetruthcentral.com is here to tell you the truth, not the narrative. Chris?
And that's why we're here. We're here to expose, we're here to kind of break down what these people are telling you and telling you why this is not so. Or if they are telling the truth, which of course, as you know,
it happens occasionally. Government officials occasionally tell the truth.
Right. Broken clock. But we'll tell you that, because we're not going to just say, hey, everybody's wrong about this. No, we're going to tell you if somebody's right. We're going to tell you if somebody's wrong. The idea is, though, Janet Yellen confidently tries her best to tell people that and same with KJP and same with Biden when he actually answers questions. Yeah, we're all stable. We're doing great. Inflation is down. Of course, inflation is down. Inflation is down from the mega peaks after the very high peaks before that. Basically, it's back to regular Biden inflationary standards.
Well,
they normalized high gas prices.
It's also, Chris, it's also down because they're lying.
Right.
They're going to come out today with statistics and tell you that inflation's under control because they manipulated the numbers again.
Well,
And
they also normalized the high numbers. They normalized.
Well, they do that too.
Right.
But people know when they go to the store or go to a restaurant, things are costing more, and the standard of living is going to deteriorate. That's the reality. And I want to focus on the reality, not the government story you're being told.
Right. Yesterday you talked about, and if you didn't catch it yesterday, catch it. It's episode number 12 of this program. Yesterday you talked about the government forcing Americans to buy these electric vehicles that are going to be 80,000. I'm sorry, that people with a median income of $80,000, and this not going to be able to afford. Okay, it's very difficult for people to afford these cars, but people up in their ivory towers are saying, "Hey, you have to do this." Well, they'll probably make a really tiny, useless car for you that's not going to go anywhere. But the fact is, it's almost like they're trying to. And I know it sounds like a conspiracy, but it's almost like they're trying to destroy the middle class.
Well, we've talked about that. The middle class is getting squeezed worldwide.
Right.
If you look at the numbers, and we'll cover this,
Right.
but the middle class is getting squeezed. And it concerns me because one of the fundamental principles of political science, going back to Aristotle, is that societies, when they're stable, have strong middle classes. If you don't have a strong middle class, society inherently becomes unstable. It's what happened in the French Revolution. The middle class largely disappeared. You had everybody poor and a few very, very wealthy elite who were this is high society. And that's why, you basically had a revolution, because the middle class was gone. Middle class was too squeezed. We're going a little over time. Let's wrap it up today. This is thetruthcentral.com. I'm Jerome Corsi. This is Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. I always end this by saying, in the end, God always wins. God will win here too. May be a battle, may not be easy, but God created this place. God can unplug it any day God wants to. God will win. And I think it's best if we be on the side of God. This is Jerome Corsi on April 12th, 2023. Thank you for joining us. God bless. We'll be back tomorrow.